again for joining us at another Facebook Live. My name is Sam. I'm one of the aquarists here at the Aquarium of Niagara. Joining me is another aquarist that we have here. You've seen her before. Hi, this is Liz. And we are here to talk to you about something very, very special today, and that is going to be coral. So behind us, we have our live coral reef, and we're just going to answer all of your questions about coral today. Any of the animals you see, including the coral, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But feel free to ask any questions that you have while we're spending time together. Feel free to type them up, and we'll read them and we'll answer them for you as best as we can. But as you are looking at a spectacular view of our coral reef exhibit, let's talk a little bit about it. So Liz, what exactly is a coral?
That's great. So as you guys are seeing all the different types that we have here, we'll break it down a little easier for you. So corals are considered a marine invertebrate. So that means they are an animal, believe it or not. I know they look pretty just plain. Yeah, plants almost sitting there doing nothing, but they are an animal. I promise we will break that down into how they are an animal. But pretty much corals are a marine invert. They are a sessile invert, which means that they just stick onto something and hang out there. Yeah, they don't like to move. So corals consist of a structure, let's say a base, and those bases can actually hold the animals themselves. And those animals we call polyps. So if you can get a good look at, well, let's work our way over to this little nest of corals up top here.
The euphyllia.
Yep, so that's our euphyllia. That's called a frog spawn coral. Underneath the very colorful tips of the coral, that's the actual polyp you're looking at. You'll see all the branches underneath, and that's the structure, the base of the coral itself. And it takes very good premium conditions in the water for corals to actually continue to build that structure that they live on pretty much. So like I was saying about the polyps themselves on the corals, normally they're completely translucent, meaning that they're clear. But because they have that really bright light that you guys are seeing come down onto them, they're able to hold algae in them, giving them that color. Now, to get a little more specific for you, the algae that lives inside the polyp's tissue is called zooxanthellae. Now, that is just a really fancy word for algae, so we'll just call it algae for you guys. That algae pretty much lives inside of the polyp, so it's a symbiotic relationship, meaning the algae lives there for free, but then the algae gives the corals food from the energy they receive from the sunlight. Now, let's see if we can break that down any easier. Sam?
Yeah, no, you did a great job. So the corals that you see here, they aren't just one animal. Each polyp is an animal. So there are thousands of polyps that could be branching out from a coral. So there are thousands of animals that we're looking at here right now. And like Liz was saying, inside of their tissues, in their bodies, they have kind of a little hitchhiker, an algae living inside of them that's making food for them. So they get food and the algae gets a house. So win-win. Everybody is happy. Yeah. That's amazing. So they are an animal, they house algae, and not only does the algae live physically inside of their tissues, there are a lot of other animals that depend on corals as well.
Exactly. So you don't have to live inside the coral to necessarily be necessary for them, but you also need coral to have fish swimming around the coral. Now, that's because fish can bring in oxygen to help the corals stay a little healthier. They, believe it or not, the corals can use the detritus from fish to also stay healthy as well. So there's a lot of things that depend on coral on a biological basis. But coral is not just important to house the fish and help the algae in the systems, but it also can help us too, as humans. So believe it or not, coral reefs all throughout the oceans, they provide home to 25% of all marine creatures in the oceans. That's crazy. That's a quarter amount of all animals completely rely on the coral reef structures themselves. Now that being said, corals can help humans because corals create these massive walls, let's say they are, underwater that can help protect our homes, our land, from being hit by tsunamis or any crazy waves, weather, hurricanes, all that stuff. So without a very strong, healthy coral reef, we lose, unfortunately, a lot of marine creatures, and we lose protection from our, from all those natural disasters. So they're very, very, very important to keep healthy. Now, let's talk about some ways that coral reefs are unfortunately declining right now, and maybe how we can help them.
Yeah, so Liz, you just said that these guys are home to 25% of all ocean animals, but a lot of people don't know how extremely rare and vulnerable coral reefs are at the moment. They only cover 1% of the entire ocean floor, and typically you can find coral reefs along the equator, down near Australia, those types of areas, really warm areas in the ocean, but still collectively altogether, they only make up 1% of the ocean floor. So what's causing so much trouble for them? Why aren't they thriving?
So like Sam was saying, corals, they're sensitive, let's say. They need specific water parameters to do well. Some of the main ones that really affect corals are the temperature of the water, the salinity of the water, the pH, and alkalinity and calcium. Let's touch on temperature first. Okay, corals like to be somewhere in between 76 degrees and 82 degrees. That's like a happy home for them. If we even go 2 degrees above or below that range that they like, they do not do well. It's just what they do. They're so sensitive of an animal. They really need to stay in a stable range.
And if that temperature gets so skewed from their range, that algae isn't happy.
Nope, that algae, nope, they are not happy.
So let's say that the temperature rises 2 degrees or drops 2 degrees. What's going to happen with that algae relationship that they have?
I mean, I see that algae leaving immediately. It's going to leave the tissue and not want to come back until that temperature, I should say, stabilizes. And that could take a really long time because the algae needs to make sure that stability is going to be there, so it wants to stay safe pretty much. So even if you see your temperatures in your oceans raise a couple degrees, that's where we see that bleaching starting to happen in our coral reefs.
Because the algae makes the food.
Exactly. Yeah. Algae takes in the sunlight from those, the sun obviously, and then produces all of that energy needed to help the polyps stay alive and healthy. Now, temperature is not just one thing that causes corals
causes them grief.
Yeah, causes them grief, let's say. They're not happy campers if their temperatures are out of whack, but also if their salinity is out of whack too. Now, salinity means pretty basically the amount of salt in your water. Okay, so they like a specific amount of salt in their water, and if it becomes too fresh for them, they're not happy, and vice versa. If it becomes too salty,
not happy.
They're not happy either.
So again, the chemistry of the water that they live in is so important, and they are so sensitive, and we see that chemistry becoming altered, especially with climate change happening. And there are a lot of ways that we are accelerating climate change, but the good news about that is that we can also help stop it. So what are some of the things that we as people might be doing to alter all of this water chemistry? And maybe we can help people understand how they can stop doing those things.
Great.
Yeah.
So our water can change a couple different ways. Either we're going to pollute it somehow by runoff or the use of pesticides in fields, or even just dumping illegal things into the water, either sewage or waste of any kind into our water sources, and then that eventually leads out to the oceans, changing everything about the water makeup. Now, we don't have to just dump something into water to change it. We can also change it because of something called greenhouse gases. So I'm sure you guys have heard that term a bunch over the past couple years, but pretty much we put too much CO2 into the air, and it does not work well with the water that it absorbs into. So it creates too acidic of an environment for your corals to thrive in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, you don't have to add something to the water, but you can mess up the air as well. And now greenhouse gases can be produced by either driving a car too much. They can be produced from, trying to house and reproduce livestock. So there's a number of things out there. I'd say those are two main ones that are really trashing our oceans right now.
So let's think about that for a second. With the CO2, carbon dioxide getting trapped into the atmosphere, and the ocean absorbs it like a big lump. It pulls it out of the atmosphere, brings it in. Think of almost drinking really acidic sodas and what that does to your teeth. It's going to do the same thing to their skeletons, to their bases. Combine that with the waters getting too warm and the coral becoming weak already, their skeletons breaking down. That's where we see a lot of damage to coral reefs. It's almost like, your teeth getting cavities. And that's not something we want for our corals. We benefit so much from them. They protect us from storms. We get a lot of seafood from them, a lot of ecotourism, even medicine. A lot of medicine comes from coral reefs. A lot of people are unaware of that. So, like Liz was saying, all of these things are happening. Unfortunately, some of the things that we as people cause, but we can be the solution. So what are some problem-solving tips that you can give to our friends at home?
It's great. I'm going to throw out 3 words that I hope everybody remembers for the rest of their life. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. So reduce the amount of times you have to drive a day. If you can find a bike or take a really nice walk outside to get somewhere, that's a way you're reducing your CO2 into the atmosphere. Reuse. If you can reuse anything that you buy from a store, instead of just using it once, a single-use item, that automatically helps our oceans because they're not going to end up in a landfill or in the ocean themselves. And recycle. Recycle is that 3rd one. If you can recycle anything, like I said, to reuse it a couple more times so you don't have to buy something else, that helps out too. You can try and do everything as organically as possible. Try and not use chemicals to fertilize your gardens. Instead, try and use more holistic, natural ways to your vegetable gardens or regular flower gardens too. A bunch of different ways out there.
Cutting down on meat.
Cutting down on meat. Like I said earlier, CO2 can be produced from a lot of that livestock that we're trying to grow and use for our meat, but unfortunately,
you don't have to cut it out completely.
Nope, you don't have to. You can just find a more sustainable way to eat that meat if you so choose to.
You can buy it locally, get to know your local farmers, or even just, having one meatless day a week. You can do Meatless Mondays. It's pretty fun to try and push your horizons with your food and learning how to cook things, and all helping out coral reefs. Even though we are so far away from them, being here in Western New York, we're really not that far away if you think about it, because we're right next to a huge freshwater ecosystem that's going to lead right out into the ocean. Now, summer is coming up, and there's one more thing that we can do to help out coral reefs, being here near freshwater, even if you go to the beach this coming summer, and that is using coral-safe sunscreens. Liz, do you want to talk a little bit more about coral-safe sunscreen?
Definitely. So everyone wants to protect themselves from, the sun themselves, because it can be harmful to our skin. Well, believe it or not, the sunscreen that we put on us has chemicals in it, and unfortunately, that's going to wash right off the minute we go into whatever water we're in. Like Sam said, it's going to leach right back out into that ocean eventually. So there are coral-safe sunscreens out there which use a little more natural...
a lot of zinc, right?
A lot of zinc, actually. Just more natural... ingredients for yourself, so you're still protected, but you're also not destroying something in the process. And I know you may think, well, it's just a little bit of sunscreen. Okay, but now multiply that by 8 billion people, and you've got a lot of extra sunscreen in the water. So one little step like that can help save the corals. And remember, all of the 25% of marine creatures living within those coral reef systems too. Now that includes sharks. Remember, sharks love to hunt for food. You got your sea turtles that love to live in the coral reefs as well. A bunch of different animals that we all are very well known with, and we don't want to see them go down as well as corals go down.
Now, there's one more thing I want to touch on before we take off. We, as animal caretakers, we are pretty good about doing all these practices, reducing, reusing, recycling. I know you and I personally, we try and cut down on meat as much as we possibly can. So biologists and scientists and zookeepers, you know, we do take these things very seriously. We do try and do them ourselves because we're here telling you to do them too. We want to practice what we preach, but we go a little bit further than that in the science realm because we have the power to actually grow and farm coral reefs.
Yeah, we do.
So do you want to talk a little bit more about that process?
Heck yeah. All right, so in a couple more Facebook segments, we're also going to have a coral fragging class, so you guys will have to come back and see it. But within the past couple years, it has been discovered that you can frag, or pretty much fragment, pieces of coral to help them grow a lot faster.
Right now it's only about, what, like 1 centimeter?
Every couple, what was it, months I think it was, or a year maybe.
A year.
A couple centimeters a year. But we've actually found a way to speed that up about 25%.
Not us personally.
Oh, right, yeah.
The science community.
Yeah, not us. But anyway, so we can take little fragments of all these corals in here, pretty much glue them onto another carbonate surface that kind of helps represent that skeleton that they already have. And then, believe it or not, those frags, given the right water quality and the right lighting, the right flow, they will actually keep growing, and they'll grow a lot faster than we previously had thought. So right now we're starting all of these fragging farms pretty much along our coastline. So a lot of aquariums down in Florida are helping us out with this.
Where they would naturally find them.
Exactly, where they would naturally find them in those waters there. So they're helping frag, and there's a bunch of facilities throughout the states, and I'm sure throughout the world, that are trying to help reestablish those coral reefs in their natural environment by doing this fragging process. So that's a little snip into the next one, but you have to come back and watch us again.
Yeah, that would be awesome. We covered a lot of ground today, guys.
We did.
We found out coral is an animal, it's not a plant. We found out how much they help us, how much they help marine life, ocean life. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to catch you again soon. Anything you want to add?
Well, check out our website right after here. We've got a really nice activity about corals and their anatomy. We hope you listened well. We can answer all your questions there, but if you guys have any other questions, feel free to shoot to us, and we'll answer them to the best of our ability.
Bye, guys.